right, let's do one more quick audio check here. So Ed, how's your audio there? Good?
I can hear you just fine.
All right, Dan,
I'm just fine.
Randy,
I'm doing well.
Gary.
Yes, sir.
Very good. All right. It looks like we've got about 160 folks in here, and I know that over 300 folks registered, so I expect some more to come in here in the next couple of minutes. But by my clock, I'm showing 2 o'clock here on the East Coast, and figure we should probably go ahead and get started here in a minute or so. Okay, showing about 1 minute after 2 here, and we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Carl Fippinger. I am Vice President, Fire and Disaster Mitigation in the International Code Council's Government Relations Department. And I wanted to just take a quick minute to welcome you to the first of 4 sessions that we're going to be doing through April. These sessions are the Code Officials webinar series, and the webinar series is focused on responding to COVID-19. So this session is sponsored jointly by the ICC Building Membership Council and also the Fire Service Membership Council. And the panelists reflect just that. So it's a great opportunity for the 2 councils to come together. And saw a quick question on whether or not there'd be any credit for participating in this event. You know, frankly, this event is meant to be a little bit more of an informal gathering of folks with the same interests, similar interests, and just kind of sharing how we're all kind of facing this new challenge and responding to the COVID-19 outbreak here and wherever you are too. So we're going to be doing these Wednesdays in April. We'll be doing them the 8th, which is today, the 15th, 22nd, and 29th. And the reason for that is we felt like that would be a good opportunity to do these, bring people together, but also serve as a kind of a virtual lead-in to our Building Safety Month kickoff in May. So we'll be doing this at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 Pacific on the remaining Wednesdays in April. Everyone who's on the call today will receive an invitation to the future webinars, but we'll also make sure that we specifically target the folks who are signed up to be part of our Building Membership Council and our Fire Service Membership Council. So again, this event is free to everyone. We see it as a little bit more of an informal gathering and an information sharing event, and this will evolve over the next several that we do. But I will give you foreshadow something that's coming up here soon, which will be, I'll give a little government relations update here in the middle of our session today. And during that, I will discuss some opportunities that we have coming up for 4 different sessions, again, that are free, focused on the kind of the shift to the virtual environment, but they also include the opportunity through the ICC Learning Center for folks to get CEUs. So we'll discuss that again here in a few minutes, but good question early on, and just wanted to put that out up front. Go to the next slide here. So a little bit about today's webinar. It's going to be a moderated panel discussion. So I'll be your moderator, and you can see the other gentlemen who are joining us here today. You know, the idea is for me to just kind of give it a little push and then get out of the way. So they'll do just fine. But your questions are certainly welcome. And if you take a look in the Q&A window that should be on the right side of your WebEx screen, you can please go ahead and start sending your questions now. I see some of them coming in. I've actually answered a few. And we'll remind you to do that as we go along. We have specific time set up at the back end of the presentation here to just really get to all of your questions and answers. Your questions and the feedback that we get from this are going to be used to shape our discussion and future webinars in the coming weeks. So if you have topics of interest, things that you want to hear about, or specific speakers or types of speakers that you'd like to see, please let us know that in the Q&A. We're going to save that and we'll do a quick after action review on this following today's webinar and shape the ones for the coming weeks. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if you have to drop off or you've got folks that aren't going to be able to join us today and they'd like to be able to see it, we're going to post this hopefully later on today or first thing tomorrow morning in the ICC's Coronavirus Response Center portion of our webpage, and we'll talk to you about that in a little bit more detail coming up during my government relations report. Today's agenda, let's see, actually I need to go back. That was good. I thought I missed a slide there. So today's agenda, we're going to do some panelist introductions here in just a moment, followed by an opening panel discussion where we plan to kind of update you for a few minutes on the current situation and some issues and trends that we're seeing out there and just kind of see where that conversation goes. We'll follow that up with a little kind of mid-session break to again, give you that government relations update, and I'll provide that. We'll follow up out of that with all of your Q&A as much as we can get to today in a roundtable discussion format, and then a quick set of closing comments, and we'll wrap up and give you some housekeeping details on future webinars and where we're going to go from here. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panel and get out of their way. So joining us from the Building Membership Council is Dan Dockery, who is the BMC chair. He's the chief building official in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County in North Carolina. Next to him is Gary West, the Fire Service Membership Council chair, and he is director of field operations for the National Fire Sprinkler Association, and he's based out of Nashville, Tennessee. He works out of there, and as part of his background was formerly the state fire marshal in the state of Tennessee. Ed Lazinski is the vice chair of the Building Membership Council. He's director of building inspection and neighborhood services in the city of West Allis, Wisconsin. And finally, but certainly not least, Randy Metz, who is the vice chair of the Fire Service Membership Council. He's battalion chief and fire marshal at Carlsbad Fire Department in the city of Carlsbad, California. So with that, I'll introduce you to those gentlemen and we'll go ahead and get the conversation started here. So, you know, maybe just a quick bit about kind of the current situation that you're all facing. Everybody's looking at this a little bit differently. So I'll turn it over to you, and whoever would like to step in first and kind of take it away, please do.
In the absence of space, I'll start the conversation off again. Thanks for everybody being on the call. And now we're at 223 people, and that's a great total, particularly considering how spread out we are and the battles we're fighting in our own jurisdictions. I want everybody to think of one thing while we go through this. The panelists aren't necessarily the people who know everything. We're the people who are going to try and let you engage and help us figure out a way to get through this. We've had a bunch of conversations about this, and the recurring theme that I think is extremely important is we're not in Florida. During a hurricane, we are not on the West Coast. During a seismic event, we're not in the Mississippi River Valley for flooding, and we're not in Oklahoma in tornadoes, or on the coast of North Carolina for flooding after an event. This is something that has taken the entire world by storm. This is an event that is unlike any other, at least in my lifetime. And while, yes, it is a trial, this is a tremendous opportunity for us to come together and find new ways to deal with what we're going to face here over the next coming weeks or months. This is a chance for us to be innovative, a chance for us to document how we continue to provide that all-important service to our citizens, the people that are part of our communities, and a chance for us to make it so that if anything like this ever happens again, we have a game plan. I applaud ICC for getting out in front of this weeks ago and starting a running dialogue for what we could do, what we are doing, how we can do it better. This is just a small part of that. And for the 227 now that are on the phone call, thanks much for being here and participating. And please don't hesitate to ask questions. It's just going to help all of us find ways to work through this crisis we've got now.
This is Gary West, and I would just follow up with that by saying we're all in this together. The fact that the code officials are working with all the different trades in construction and things, and even the developers and all of our partners out there, we're all in this together. And one of the most important things is that we are all able to do our jobs safely, and that we do it in a way that protects our people that are working in our industry. So um, I think it's really important to come together. Our lives are going to be different now from this point forward as far as how we do things and what we do. Um, I know within my role now with NFSA that we're working in every state in the country, just and everything is different in every area. So, but the most important thing is that we're all working together and we're working safely in those aspects.
To kind of partner on what Gary just said, it's not just that being safe out on the job site, making sure that you and your staff and the contractors are all practicing safe safe distancing and PPEs and everything, but also don't forget about that mental health aspect of you and your staff and the contractors that are out there. I mean, this is a very stressful, scary time for everybody. So I think everybody kind of thinks about that physical side of protecting yourself, but don't forget about that mental side as well. People are going to be stressed out. You don't know what they have going on at home, in high risk situations at home, or somebody has been affected by this. I think by the time this is over, all 232 of us or somebody or be very close to somebody who gets infected with this. So you just don't know what's going on. So make sure that you're cognizant of that. Watch your staff, watch other people around that you work with. If they're feeling down in the dumps, anything like that, or anybody on this call, make sure that they're that they need, and just get out there, just laugh every now and then. I've said that a few times on our calls. Just watch some Three Stooges, watch Parks and Rec. Watch something, or just you got to take some time to kind of relax and put this all into perspective and just relax and laugh a little bit for yourself.
And I guess I would add to the discussion that there is no one size fits all solution for all departments across the country. We're all doing something very different. And that's what we hope to bring out through this conversation is what are we doing? What have we found that works? How have we been able to address um, some form of business continuity to be able to serve those that seek our services in a safe manner, and what works for us and what hasn't. You all have, tried to do different things, be thinking outside the box in many cases, and a lot of this has been on the fly, trial and error. So we've all done things that we say, hey, that worked in a virtual environment. This didn't work so well for us, and this is an opportunity for us to have that discussion. Um, you provide opportunities for others to think in a direction that they hadn't before. It doesn't necessarily take a huge technology budget to be able to find a new way to do things in a pandemic environment like we're working in right now. And that's what we really want to be able to focus on is lessons learned and how can we help our neighbor, whether our neighbor is the city next door or a state across the country, because we're all in different phases of this. In California, we're almost 26 days into this process now since once we changed how we do business. Other states have just made that change in the last week or so. So we're all in a different position in how we're dealing with our customers and how we're dealing with our employees. And hopefully those states that were early on in addressing some of the issues can share what they know, and it can help a lot of those states that are still looking for answers to find the right path earlier than we did originally.
All good comments to get started. And Randy and all the rest of the folks on the panel, one of the big things that I heard you say to us as we were planning this, and us being myself and Bill Nash, who are the staff liaisons to your councils, you stressed a good bit about caring about the personal health and wellness of those joining us today, right? This is a more informal discussion, but maybe you can speak to a little bit of that for a few minutes and talk about that caring piece, the caring for each other, looking out for yourself and for others a little bit as we get started today.
Absolutely, Carl. For my staff, the most important thing for me was ensuring that they felt comfortable and safe, that I had an opportunity to listen to them, what their fears and concerns were, and try to come up with some answers that really did address what they were feeling. Whether that's, can I safely go out on a job site? Do I have to be the only one there? What type of personal protective equipment should I have, since we're not necessarily dealing with an actual COVID-19 patient? Is it different than dealing with people that may or may not be infected? We had to look a lot towards our county medical director to help us find what is the acceptable level of PPE that we could develop here. And once we provided that, did that help our inspectors or plan checkers or even my permit technicians? We've seen some jurisdictions that are actually quarantining their plans for 24 hours. Understanding how long the virus lives on countertops versus paper. Are you closing your offices to the general public to protect your administrative staff? Those were all questions that had to be answered. And we had to ensure that the staff felt like we had their best interests, and that we weren't just trying to keep doing business for the sake of doing business. We understand that every day that job sites are shut down is costing a lot of money economically, not just to the developer, but to the city as a whole. But that couldn't be the only factor in how we made decisions in ensuring that our staff felt like they were being cared for. And I think providing them the opportunity to be heard, providing them the opportunity to weigh in on what makes them feel safe, and then doing our best to ensure that all those items that are reasonable were actually steps that were taken, really made a difference in the mental health of our staff. At the same time, finding a way for staff that don't need to be in the office to create opportunities for them to work remotely really helped the mental health of a lot of my admin staff. I've even taken that to some of my field inspection staff, since we aren't doing all of the inspections we used to do. We've provided some administrative tasks that they're able to work on, things like guidelines or policy directives that they can do remotely from home and not have to be in the office every day. That has allowed them to take care of their families, have good mental health, and still be able to provide and move forward with the things that are important to me within a fire prevention bureau here in the city of Carlsbad. All that type of stuff, I think, put me in a good position and let the staff know that me as their manager is going to do everything I can in my power to make sure that they are the focus and that they are healthy.
Around the table.
Yeah, Randy just brought up a good point too. I mean, that's one of the things that we're doing as well. Is as some of my staff is sitting at home, we're documenting all of our policies, procedures. We're updating all that stuff so that when we do come out of this, we can we kind of have some of those documents there to if we had policies, procedures before, let's make sure that they're updated now, and if we have things that weren't documented before, so I think it's finding things that that your staff can still do from home, and still be productive, for the future when you move forward and we kind of get back to normal, I guess, as you call it.
I'll jump in there. So, following up with people, I think, is very important. One of the things is that as I work with my staff, most of my staff is remote. But during this time, we've been able to, well, of course, we're having more meetings and more contact with each other. But one of the things that I have found very useful is to as we care about people and what they do, but also care about their families. And we always start our meetings off with going around the room to say, "How you doing? How's your family doing? What's going on in your life?" And kind of do that to get everyone to engage. The other part of that is too is to have a little bit of fun in those meetings. Most of our meetings have been business in the past, but during this time, we've started having a little fun on our calls. We've set some themes that we would do calls now that we talk about our hobbies or we talk about uh, our favorite sports team or something like that. And I think that helps everyone just cope with all the things that are going on. So um, that's one of the things I feel like that makes your team closer together and helps everyone cope through all this. Know about their families, know about their personal health, and have a little fun while you do that.
Dan, I have a sneaking suspicion you have a few words on this subject.
I, I do. I do. And I love it when everybody talks about health. And I love it when everybody talks about community. And I want us all to remember that the big catchword right now everywhere is social distancing, social distancing. And I want us to think about that in relation to physical distancing too, because most of what we do in process is not social distancing, it's actual physical distancing. And inspectors and people who are in our business, because we're self-starters, because we're out, in our communities, often by ourselves, visiting job sites and all, we have a tendency to isolate ourselves mentally. That is not good for us. Um, we need to, on behalf of one another, all of us, all 238 people who are on this call right now, we need to make an attempt to reach out and touch everybody else. I guarantee you everybody's got one of these. And if you don't know how to use it, half of us have kids that are young that can teach us how to use them. And we don't want to socially distance ourselves from our community. Our community needs to hear from us. Our community needs to see us doing as much business as usual as we possibly can. But we don't know what we don't know about this disease. And so we take all of these precautions all of our panel has talked about before. And I'm looking at our screen, Gene Novak, Carl Fippinger, Rich Anderson, documents for PPE, masks, social distancing, um, photo images, remote video inspections, testings, third-party reports. Somebody said we need to catalog all these processes. We do. Document, document, document. But while you're documenting, as you see something that works, communicate it, communicate it, communicate it. Keep talking to one another and think of the people who don't have somebody to talk to or their normal process is not to talk with people. Make it a point to reach out to that person. This social gap that we are creating, we need to close it a little bit because we have to be the cure in our business, in our communities for that physical distance that this virus is imposing on us. And I want us all to work real hard on that part of it too.
Good points from all. And I think that was really what this was all about. Right? Was trying to get everybody in the same room and just having a quick minute to be able to take a deep breath. But I mean, we're going to get to the information. We're going to get to the stuff that the people need. But just that opportunity to be able to come together and share some of this information amongst your peers, be able to see some folks on the screen that is really where we're at. And we're going to look to try and do some more of that over the next 3 of these that we do by increasing the audience participation, maybe taking a little bit more proactive of an approach to have broader discussion. But for today, it's where we are. And I think that's a really great way to kick things off. In terms of kind of where we're at and the emerging issues and trends that are kind of coming out of this, maybe we take the next couple of minutes, 5 minutes or so, to just kind of from your perspectives, maybe talk a little bit about what we're seeing, right? So, to give some context to that, Ed and Dan are seeing it in the field, and they're building departments, they're running their shows in their jurisdictions. Randy is doing a combination of remote work and on-site work, and is also spending some time in the emergency operations center in his fire department. A unique perspective, I think, is going to come from Gary, because of the fact that Gary is working in the same kind of environment I am, managing to work in a nonprofit environment, but still keep the operation moving and relevant, with an enormous field staff and a whole bunch of members that are looking for results during a time that is pretty challenging, to say the least. So maybe we spend a few more minutes on that, and when we wrap that up, I'll give the government relations update here very briefly, so we can get right back to the Q&A. And before we do that, just a reminder. Right side of your screen, you should have the ability to go into the Q&A feature and ask your questions. Dave Nichols, one of our GR staff members out in Arizona, is doing a really great job keeping track of the themes and the trends that we're hearing. Ask your questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can today, and follow up with you afterwards if we don't get to them. So, gentlemen, back to you.
The rest of you talk for a minute. I talk too much.
Thank you, Dan. I'll go ahead and start. So from my viewpoint, working with our members of our association nationwide, we see many different things. We see areas where work can be performed. We see areas where work cannot be performed. The main thing that we promote is that we're promoting safe and secure construction sites, and practicing all of the social distancing practices. There's been a lot of things that have happened that we've seen where companies have become innovative, where they were running a single shift, and quite a few people on a job site now, to running multiple shifts with a very limited number of people on site each shift. There's been a lot of innovative ways of that happening. The other side of that, on the code side, is that we're seeing a lot of code officials that are being innovative in how they're doing inspections, and how all that's working. Some of them doing it remotely, some of them doing it in different ways. So I think there's a variety of operations all over the country that are working really well, and from my viewpoint, we're trying to support the construction industry, and trying to keep it going as much as we can, with the caveat that they're doing it safely. We don't want anyone to be in harm or anything like that. And from an emerging issues or trend side of this, the Fire Service Membership Council has had a subcommittee that's worked on emerging trends now for the last couple of years, and we've developed a lot of or come up with a lot of things that of operations and stuff in the past that were emerging issues or trends for the fire service. And I would just say we haven't seen anything yet. I mean, emerging trends are going to change our world. They're going to change how our codes are enforced, and how that we work each day, and things like that. So I'm going to say that we're all going to be involved in these emerging trends and issues in the future, and where we've been very busy in the past, just looking into these things and working through these new things that are happening. We really haven't seen anything yet as to what's in our future.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to bring up the point, and actually I see somebody just made a comment about it too, is just what is that new normal then once we do get back to normal. I think as we start going through some of these processes, Gary just brought up some of those innovative trends and everything that people have been watching. Digital plan review, or virtual inspections, I should say, and digital plan review, and some of these things that have been out there for a little while, and is some people were hesitant to jump on with those because it's new technology. You kind of want to play out a little bit first, but now kind of got kicked in the butt to start stuff and video inspections and looking at codes digitally instead of the paper version of code books and some things like I think as some of the technology as are using it and they get accustomed to it over the next month or two, however long this all lasts, I think people are going to start to see that there's some definitely some value to that and start kind of using this in the future. Then if I'm still there, I kind of lost some of the other video there, but hopefully I'm still with you guys.
And we've got there. You're back now. Your video's on, and we had your audio the whole time. So keep
Okay.
going.
Yep, there you go. But yeah, so it's who knows what that future is kind of holding. Video conferences, video training, some of the things like that. Is that going to kind of be the new normal? Instead of going off to training, are we going to host sessions like this in the future? It's going to save on some travel costs and some things like that, but also you keep that distance. If there is a future outbreak, you're keeping people safer. So looking out at what that future is going to hold for our industry, I think is exciting almost for when we do get back to normal, if you call it that.
Anybody else here? Go ahead, Randy.
I'll jump in there. I agree with everything that's been said about, will we ever get back to normal? I don't know that we'll ever get back to the way we were doing business prior to this process here. And that may not necessarily be a bad thing. I think that a lot of us will be able to utilize this pandemic here to open up areas of service that we may not have thought we were able to do in the past. And I know that that's how my department is approaching the issue right here with utilizing of electronic plan review and virtual inspections and really evaluating what my core services are and what I need to do versus all the other things that I also do and be able to pick and choose in events like this what I can temporarily shut down while I continue to serve certain areas of my organizational goals and objectives, and determining now what those core functions are. I did see a question over here that talked about are inspectors essential workers? And I know that that question has been uh, differing answers have been given from state to state. I'm in a state where all government employees are considered disaster workers, and we're considered essential even if you're in an admin role. Is the inspector itself and their functions one that should continue even in a pandemic like this? We have a federal guideline, we've got a state guideline, and then we have counties and cities that are interpreting differently from the state and the federal government. um, you know I believe that the inspector is an essential worker here in the United States. If they're going to allow construction projects to continue in any form, then those need to continue to be inspected to ensure that they're safe once the project's done. And if we skip steps in the process now because of a pandemic, that may be detrimental to us in the long run. So I would be making the argument that, yeah, the inspector is an essential needed function, regardless of where we're at in our community right there. There's a lot of cities that have actually taken their inspectors and shifted them from their normal duties into other types of activities, whether that's going out and checking all of our special needs communities, our senior living facilities, ensuring that they understand all the COVID-19 policies, looking at it from a community risk reduction process on, I may not be able to go out and do all the inspections I normally did, but I can go out and have an impact in those communities to ensure that they're being safe and that their needs are being met. That's all in how you think outside the box as an inspector. It doesn't have to be a fire inspector. It can be a building inspector, a mechanical inspector, anything that you want to do and provide them some training on can really make an impact in how your city responds and recovers to this type of a process here.
Very good. Well, in the interest of time here too, what I want to do is ask first from all four of you, any other final comments on that, because I'd like to shift us into the next piece of this, which is the update I was going to do, but I didn't want to, end this too early. So any closing comments on this particular subject?
Just that an emerging trend, it's just an emerging trend now. It's going to be the way we do business 30 days, 60 days, a year from now. And I think we'd be kind of remiss in our responsibility as dedicated servants if we don't use every opportunity during this to catalog what we do and how, and make it available in a format that doesn't just serve the large jurisdictions, it also serves the minor jurisdictions. And that's going to take a little bit of work, but I've got great confidence that we can do it. I noted in one of the surveys that went around, 40 to 60% of the people had deficiencies in their data management they used for inspections. And so a lot of the things that we're going to talk about here and in the next couple of weeks, they don't even have the infrastructure for in their jurisdictions, and their budgets don't allow it, and their mindset of the people who administer their budgets don't allow it. So we have to make it as easy as possible for them. We have to concern ourselves not just with the big cities, but the little bitty tiny towns too. Everybody has to get involved in this, and we have to again communicate where we want to be 30 days, 60 days, 2 years, 5 years from now, and that will help us in any situation, not just another pandemic like this.
Dan, that's a super important point, and it's almost like I paid you to say that because of the fact that I think it segues it nicely into covering a little bit about some of that survey information that you noted there. I think it's a perfect opportunity to do that, and let me just take a minute here to kind of move on to that piece of it, which I think will set up the next part of our conversation really well. So the slide that's on the screen right now is a little bit about some of the things that we're working on within the ICC enterprise. So while it says it's a government relations update, this certainly reflects the work of our entire staff during this time. And what I wanted to cover with you, and I'm going to do this very briefly, and let me tell you why. As you logged in today and as you registered for this event, there are several documents, pretty much all of them that I'm going to cover here are posted for all of our participants and attendees to download today and actually have for themselves. So they're also posted on the Code Council website, and I'll show you where here in a little bit. But wanted to direct your attention to that. If for some reason you have trouble downloading them, email addresses for myself and my colleague Bill Nash are at the end of this presentation, and we will make sure that you get those copies or get directed to where they are virtually so you can have them. A lot of folks are looking for these tools and resources. So first off, we'll cover the code official survey results. We'll talk a little bit about where we're parking a lot of this information in the ICC's online coronavirus response center. Talk a little bit about the tools and resources that are out there, in particular 2 documents, health and safety considerations for code officials, and also some options that you might be able to use when considering converting existing buildings or using some of these temporary structures like membrane structures for healthcare use at alternate care facilities. And then last, I'll cover some upcoming ICC training events, which again are free and include, for those of you that would like the CEUs outside of this informal construct that we have, the ability to be able to do that. So I'm going to breeze through these so we can get back to the discussion, but let me just move some things around here on the screen. So the first thing that I wanted to cover is what Dan was talking about here a minute ago. So this is posted and has been out. It's part of an ICC news release. So our government relations staff took some time to reach out to the members between the 22nd of March and April 1st. And of the members, we got over 1,100 responses, so really good participation from all 50 states and DC, and the populations ranged anywhere from those small ones that Dan hit on all the way up to 4.6 million in population in terms of the size of the jurisdiction. So, 93% of you said in this sample that you're still doing your work. Inspections either remotely or in person, right? 65% are reporting that some or all employees that do this kind of work are working remotely, just like we're all coming to you today, with the exception of our friends in the building side. I don't know what kind of an indictment that is on Randy and I and Gary that we're all working remotely and they're in the office, I think, but it's an interesting piece of information to look at. So 26% at the time that we did the survey said that they have seen requests for temporary occupancy or structured permits as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. I think that number is probably a bit higher now, even though that information is only really a week old from the closing of the survey. In terms of the virtual capabilities, this is the piece that Dan was driving home, right? 23% said that folks don't have access to needed hard copy and books. And if you look at the hard copy versus electronic usage, you see the greater majority, 2/3 of our folks are saying that they use both. 27% are still very solidly in the hard copy environment, and 7% are embracing an all kind of electronic format. So that's what we're seeing amongst our members, and that's going to change probably with this event, but it was also changing even prior to this event too. 40% don't have the capability to do electronic or remote plan reviews. That's a big deal. 30% don't have the ability to do any aspect of this IT piece. This is what Dan was saying. And then 61% are reporting that they don't have the capability to do these electronic and remote inspections. So that's some pretty impactful stuff. Again, I'll remind you that you can download it. It's also posted on our website. There's a deeper dive into this white paper that was produced, and I'm just going to scroll through it very quickly. That goes into a little bit more detail than that infographic, and any of your government relations reps would be happy to help you to interpret this information and use it as you need. Also, I need to say that the survey is still ongoing, and we're going to continue doing these snapshots at specific intervals to be able to kind of update that here as time goes on. The next piece that I wanted to point you toward was, let me pull this down for one sec, our Coronavirus Response Center. So this is a specific section of the ICC website. You can see the address up top, and it'll also be included here in the slides later on. But we've parked a lot of really great information here for you, and a lot of the things that I'm covering today are in here. This next document that I'm going to cover is here. Wednesdays in April, here's our event. And then you can kind of see where you can take that survey and any number of other things that are applicable to you. So I'll let you go in there and take a look at it. Again, the address will be provided at the end, and all this information is either linked or parked in there. Kind of continuing on to a couple other documents. So yesterday's Building Safety Journal, actually, this won't be coming out for about another week. It was posted to Building Safety Journal yesterday, but it's something that I worked on with a lot of other ICC staff, and also polled our members out throughout the country to talk a little bit about what they need in the health and safety realm. So we talk about figuring out what your risk is, how to classify that risk, talking about job hazard analyses in the context of COVID-19, but then also managing your risk in the workplace. So this is another really good document that points to some national level guidance. And again, we're happy to help you with this. You can download it today. The next piece is something that I think folks are really looking for. So we're talking about here this conversion of existing buildings or using the membrane structures for temporary healthcare use. When we quote the CMS guidelines that came out earlier in March, and some of the waivers that they've put forth. We talk about the use of the tents, where that is in our code, and then also talk about this big piece of converting existing buildings to alternate healthcare facilities. And there's a lot that goes into this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. You can download it. We're going to provide you some additional resources on this as time goes along. But that's just some of the stuff that we're doing for you. And then today at noon, the ICC released a press release, and this goes to the point of specifically the move to virtual. And my colleague Ryan Coker has been working on this kind of night and day, along with our communication staff and our learning center staff. These are training offerings that are free to everyone, and you would have to access them, I believe, as a member through the ICC Learning Center to be able to get your CEUs. But April 9th, they'll be doing one on moving permitting and plan review online. April 13th, options for virtual and remote inspections. April 17th, online access to codes and standards to kind of address that 6% wedge there and talk about moving people online to the codes space. And then April 21st is certification and training update. So this is a really good opportunity for folks to do that deeper dive and get some of those CEUs that folks are clamoring for. And also another way to kind of move you from where we were before all this happened, again, to that point of where we're going to be after this kind of settles down a bit and what our new normal is going to be. So that's posted in the news releases section of the ICC website and was also part of the information in your download package here today. So that's my update. And with that, what I would do is just encourage you again to submit your questions if you don't mind. And what we'll do is, again, Dave is aggregating some of those for us, and we're going to do our best to get to some of those right here and right now. So what I'm going to do is just kind of minimize my screen and give it back to the panel here. But I know Dave is kind of working up a set of the questions for us right now. But one of the big threads we can get started with is the piece about tools and resources. So, tools and resources and using ICC as that center connection point for sharing out the case studies and the best practices in this environment. So that's really the number one theme that we've started to see emerge here. There are more, but maybe you all can take that up now as we move through the rest of the presentation here in our Q&A.
We move forward in the things that we do. I think that in the fire protection world, I know in the fire protection world, it's about making sure that the systems that are already in place too, that they also get inspected, tested, and maintained. And so doing that using innovative ways to make that happen, I think is important. And I saw so many comments talking about video versus pictures and things like that. And I'm not sure that I even know the answers to that in the future, but being able to keep our systems that are already existing in place and as new systems go in, being able to test those things and maintain those remotely, and especially over this time period, is really important. I say that, and I would say this, and I've said this to a lot of my friends in the fire service, that as we go through all this pandemic disaster that we're going through, fires still continue to burn. People are still in danger of fire, and it's all of our it's our responsibility to just address these issues as we move forward.
Thank you for that, Gary. I was just getting unmuted here. Ed, did you have something?
No, I was waiting for Dan to jump in there. Dan never is never this quiet, but no, yeah, and I think it does kind of go back to some of the things that Dan was saying earlier. You have those smaller jurisdictions out there. They're not going to have the resources. They're not going to have the budget available to just run out there and pick up a drone or pick up different software platforms to be able to do things remotely. So I think that's some of the things, we also want to gather some feedback, from anybody out there, anybody that's out there that has had some success on some of this stuff. Relay it back, or ICC relay it back, here's practices for some jurisdictions. Here's some of the best practices for the medium. Here's some of the best for the smaller jurisdictions, and and here's kind of your best bang for the buck. If you have a very limited budget, you might not be able to get a drone to go do some rooftops, or you may not be able to get some of this fancier software to do some digital plan reviews, but here's something that you can do. And yeah, and I think Randy brought it up earlier too, that a lot of this is just trial and error right now. So as people are starting to try these things and do this stuff, make sure that you're relaying that back. The building membership council, the fire service membership council will sort of be that conduit to kind of gather some of this information. We'll gather all that feedback. We'll get it to ICC. We'll get it out to the membership, and we'll start to almost have that cookie cutter cookie recipe approach of, all right, if you're a smaller jurisdiction, here's some of the things that we recommend that you do and that you get. If you're a larger jurisdiction, if you got a little bit more money and budget and staff and resources, here's some of the other things then that you guys can expand on here. So we're all kind of thrown into this. We all are trying things. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, but we need to get that feedback from everybody else so we can pass that along as well.
And what I would jump in and say here really quick too is admittedly a shameless plug for the membership councils, because I think the environment that's created under those and what we're doing here today is exactly where a lot of this stuff is going to start to move up from. So again, contact information at the end for Bill Nash and I to be able to get you engaged if you want to join the membership councils and get involved in this conversation. We do monthly calls. They're open to the public. There's a governing committee for each of the councils, and there are ways for folks to participate and be part of this discussion and how this moves forward, and then the policy and the processes and even the code changes that will come from that. So a really good point there, Ed. Others on this?
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that coming from a jurisdiction that a month ago did not do electronic plan check and it did not do any type of virtual inspection, we've been able to make that happen, and I haven't spent a dime. It doesn't necessarily have to be with expensive software. It's not perfect in any sense of the word, but we're able to, if you have a smartphone and you have email and can open a PDF, you can find a way to get some of this done in a virtual world. And it's just going to be, we talked about it, trial and error. Can I do FaceTime? Can I do Skype? There are lots of different virtual platforms, and how you walk somebody through that. I would have been the one that says, yeah, I don't do those, and now I do. And obviously, when this is done, we will explore how we can do it better, and what software can I do to actually do this the right way. But we're finding a way to do a workaround right now, and I think that's what this is all about in serving our customers at this point, and ensuring that we can continue to do this and be safe for not only our job sites but our inspectors, our permit technicians. Uh, think outside the box, and that's the big thing here that we all need to be willing to do. Is not just take no, we don't do those as an acceptable answer right now. Look for, say, I'm going to find a way to try that and see what happens.
Good points. Moving on to a little bit more of the virtual side of things here really quick. And one of the things that I need to stress, Selena Horton from our ICC staff was able to correct me kind of midstream here too, to let you know that, and Ryan let me know that there are some, on this virtual piece, there are some consideration documents in here for you to be able to download on these topics, but also that the ICC webinars are all free. You don't have to be a member, but I believe that to get the CEUs, you'll probably have to be affiliated. But anyway, all those resources are there. And on the virtual side, we're getting a number of questions about, really what are the considerations for some of the things that may be acceptable in the environment right now because of the crisis that we're in, where there's maximum flexibility being allowed by the federal government, and then state governments and local governments kind of falling in under that. Some of the things that are happening today during the crisis that are acceptable, particularly in this virtual environment that you're talking about, Randy. What are some of the sticking points that we might see? Like, I don't want to bring it up in an overarching context, but folks are concerned about liability. Folks are concerned about some of the gaps that might be created by this virtual environment. So, what are some of the things that you all see in that world that may be okay today and afforded flexibility, but moving on will probably need to be addressed in a more formal manner? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I think everything is going to change, and we'll find out what works and we'll find out what did not work. And the thing that we've got to remember is that our communities do not exist or progress in the building environment without us. That health and safety and welfare in the building environment, it's a partnership between us and everybody we do business with. We have a discussion we have here all the time. Who's your partners? And if we look at socially who our partners are, business wise who our partners are, process who our partners are, before long we realize that everybody we come in contact with. I'm in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. We've got over 300,000 people, and at one point in time, they are all partners. So how do we use everything to serve those partners? Find out what you've got, and I'm going to back up a little bit here. Find out what your resources are that you possess right now. Look at the community, the way you used to do business, the way you want to do business, and find out what the need is that the community expects of you. And look at the simple tools. And I'm going to go back to the number of questions about remote inspections. And we didn't do remote inspections up to this point because we didn't feel like we were equipped with them in a data management system. But then really all it is recording. So what do? We work with the people that are our partners to develop trust in one another. That we're going to tell one another the truth, that we're going to represent everything honestly, and we're going to be able to help one another with that basis. It's like having a virtual handshake, a social virtual handshake. I'll keep going back to these silly little things right here. I had no idea that you could do FaceTime on an Android. Well, we need to develop a template that tells people how to walk through this process. Now, you can't do FaceTime on an Android, but if you have WhatsApp, then WhatsApp, which is available on Android, also communicates with FaceTime. I didn't know you had Duo. So if you have two Android users and they both have smartphones, then you can do remote inspections from Duo. So your equipment's there. We just need people to tell us how to use it, to tell us those small things. WhatsApp equals FaceTime, FaceTime equals iPad or iPhone, Duo equals Android. And then we start a process with the partners we trust. We call our Home Builders Association. We say, okay, we're going to start doing more remote inspections because we need to, and it benefits you and us. Where do we want to start? We start at the job box. You start at the job box where you see the permit. You make sure that the job is where you say it is. You walk in. Are we going to do first-time inspections? Are we just going to do re-inspections? Are we going to allow it for mechanical changeouts? Are we going to do insulation inspections? Everything that we can make it work for and feel comfortable with, let's do it now. As we do it, we'll certainly learn a whole lot about the process. We'll document what really worked well, what didn't, and that's going to be in our 30, 60-day plan moving forward. And it'll be something that we can share written out in a template with all of our jurisdictions, promote consistency, promote communication, promote trust with our partners. This is a huge, huge opportunity for us. It's a trial, but it's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. We're getting a little bit close on time. Any closing thoughts on this one before we wrap it up? We can go probably just a couple minutes after, but wouldn't want to ask folks to stay much longer than that.
Carl, I just want to say that, and looking at the comments talking about residential housing, we don't want to forget about affordable housing. And around the country, affordable housing is a big topic for legislators and just people in general, and having housing available. So figuring out what to do on residential, I think, is important. Probably a good topic to talk about on another call.
Yeah, for sure. And again, folks, if you put that into the Q&A on this one today, we'll give you email addresses here in just a couple minutes. You can submit ideas there. Happy to move through these topics in future ones. We've got 3 more. So anybody else? Randy, Ed?
Yeah, I'd speak
Go ahead,
quickly
Rand.
to the liability issue, and I think from my perspective, I don't see. We're making our best effort in order to do inspections through this environment here, and I don't know that the liability would be any different through this than if we were there in a live person format and we miss seeing something on the inspection there. There's always going to be a certain um, opportunity for us to miss things. And as long as I think we're not doing anything that's malicious or negligent in the intent, I don't believe that my city attorney's office or your town council or whatever would view this as a liability related issue. As long as you've really thought out what do I need to look at, am I able to see it effectively in a virtual world, and am I able to document what I saw? Those are the three items I'm looking at there.
Ed, you had something too.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, Randy said it better than I probably could have. Yeah, I was just going to touch on some of that too, but I think too, just make sure that you're documenting what you're doing. Don't just write it down that you did an inspection. Put on there that it was a virtual inspection for now, so that if you're going back later on, you can say, yeah, I wasn't physically there. It was a virtual. There may be things then that you might not be able to see, or one of my inspectors brought up the other day that a lot of times when he's going in to do like basement rec rooms and things like that, it's just that smell of mold or water issues that he notices and talks to the homeowner about when he's in there. And he said, I won't be able to do that off of a virtual inspection, which of course you can't. So again, just documenting, this is how we do it, and this is how we did it, and this is why. Document what you can see, what you can't see, and then just staying consistent throughout. Making sure life safety stuff is done and taken care of, but staying consistent with what you would normally do. And if you're not comfortable with it, then make sure that that's noted, or that you find another way to get yourself comfortable with it.
Very good. All good comments. And I think, that tees up the fact that we've got a lot more kind of coming up here too. So it's the top of the hour, and understanding that folks kind of signed on for this for about an hour, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. I know we've been able to carry 200 folks through this plus for the last hour, and we thank you for that, and we want you to join us again. So as a reminder, today's session has been recorded. We're going to go ahead and post it in the Coronavirus Response Center. You see the address there. And for those of you that are just looking for a simple link to that, if you just go to our main page, iccsafe.org, it's right there kind of on the main banner, so you can't miss it. But you can also Google Coronavirus Response Center for the ICC, and you'll find it that way too. Our next roundtable is going to be Wednesday, April 15th, 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific. And just wanted to thank the number of people that came on the call today. I know that a number of the ICC board have joined us today, and we thank you for your participation, as well as a number of the ICC staff are listening in, and let alone all of the members and folks that are joining us from all over the country. So please send us in the Q&A your thoughts on how we did, how we can do better, what you might want to hear the next time, and this whole group will take a look at that and kind of work our way through that. So as promised, here's some, this is the last slide that we'll show. This is the contact information for Bill and myself. We are the staff liaisons to both of these councils and are in direct touch with all four of these gentlemen and the other members of the governing committee and their broader membership. So again, get engaged, join the membership councils, and we do our monthly meetings, even consider taking on a leadership role. And we'll continue to address this information not only in the membership council meetings, but again over the next 3 weeks as we lead into Building Safety Month on all this. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll get this posted here either later today or first thing tomorrow on the ICC website. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.